Welcome to Payoff Pitch Live. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined as always on a beautiful Monday morning by Sean Zerillo. It's the first day of the week, but the last day of the month here in June, and we're here to break down the 8 games in the bigs here. We're going to start with Sean's best bet, moving to his favorite underdog, and then wrapping it up with the rest of his card, which today is underdog laden. But first, Sean, I want to do an either or with you in terms of the futures market, looking at one team that's hot and one team that is not. Of these two futures, the New York Mets to miss the playoffs at plus 270, or the Houston Astros to win the AL pennant at plus 410, which are you more interested in? The Mets, as I mentioned, they're in a nosedive, 3-13 across their last 16. 6 times since mid-June, they've been shut out or held to just one run, so their lineup has been ice cold. The Astros, meanwhile, have a red-hot pitching staff. They went 5-1 against the Cubs and Phillies in recent series, giving up a grand total of 8 runs across those 6 games. And now they have the best home record in the majors. So one more time for you, the Mets to miss the playoffs at plus 270, or the Astros to keep this rolling and to win the AL pennant at just north of 4-1. Which one do you like better?
I would say there's definitely more value on the Astros pennant bet. If you look around the projection market for the Mets, the lowest projection has them still making the playoffs about 75, 76% of the time. Basically, on average, everybody else has them closer to 80%, 82%. So I think the Mets are still a pretty safe playoff team. That said, you look at the standings in the National League. The NL Central may be the best division in baseball at this point. I know we talked a lot about the NL West earlier in the year. The Padres, the Giants, and the D-backs have all kind of fallen off a little bit, and the Brewers, Cardinals, Reds, and Cubs are all above 500. So now the NL Central is the division with 4 teams better than 500, and frankly, all on the heels of the Mets, all 4 of those teams. So when you suss out the National League, when you consider that the Braves may still not be dead in the water, I know Chris Sale went down, but they're still going to remain competitive throughout the end of the season. There are 8, 9, 10, 11 potential playoff teams in the National League still all vying for 3 wildcard positions, 8 teams vying for 3 wildcard positions. So, yeah, I do think the National League is extremely competitive. Mathematically, projections say the Mets should be a safe team, but I do worry considering they still can't find a left-handed reliever. They keep cycling these guys in and out since Danny Young and AJ Minter went down. Genesis Cabrera came and went. Padilla came and went. They just ended up acquiring Poche, I believe, who's doing their left-handed relief now, but also Sean Manaea got shut back down. Starting pitching has been a significant concern. You've seen Blackburn and Montas come up for them, come back from injury for them, and get absolutely shelled. So the Mets starting rotation is a big concern. The Mets and Dodgers have used more pitchers this year than any other teams. They both used like 54 or 55 pitchers on the season. So just new arms constantly for these teams, which to one point, yes, like it means you've had a lot of injuries. To another, it means that you're keeping your best arms fresh for the end of the season. You're not pushing anybody too aggressively early on. But, the projections say the Mets should still be a playoff team. Here's my concern with the Astros. What is the status of Yordan Alvarez? Because the Astros have the #1 offense against left-handed pitching this year. They just do not hit righties particularly well. And a lot of that is because Yordan hasn't been healthy for them. And his status seems like it's kind of in doubt at this point. I haven't really received any positive updates on his injury status, but the American League does look much more wide open than the National League. I bet the Tigers Rays pennant futures earlier in the season pokes on those teams, thinking that the AL was wide open. Either of those teams could get past the Yankees come October. Detroit obviously looks like the best of the bunch at the moment, but I do think Houston, as they are every year, going to continue to be a threat come playoff time. Until Houston doesn't make the ALCS, it's kind of hard to pick against them making it there. They've done it every single year for what, like the past decade. So yeah, Houston is always dangerous. And, just mathematically, I think there's probably more value. Not interested in betting either one at this point in time, either the Mets to miss or the Astros to win the pennant. But of those two, I think I'd prefer Houston.
Let's turn now to your best bet for Monday, and it's an under between the Orioles and the Rangers, sitting at 8.5. Patrick Corbin, we just can't quit you. Last year, it was an auto fade. This year, at least for the first 2 months, we were tailing Corbin quite a bit. And I mean, basically, it panned out because if you look at his first 12 starts, he didn't give up more than 3 runs in any of those outings. But in his last two, 10 innings pitched, 15 hits, 9 runs, and 2 homers allowed. He's clearly turning back into a pumpkin. So the question is, how quickly do we want to get off of his bandwagon? On the other side of this matchup, you have Trevor Rogers, who's coming off of arguably his best start of his entire career. 8 innings pitched, against, a lineup that should have given him issues last week. He scattered 3 hits, didn't allow a run, and was super efficient with just 101 pitches in that start. So looking at this, pitching matchup doesn't necessarily scream for an under, and no shocker, it's super hot in Arlington, but the wind is pushing in from left center. Any other element that was leading you to the under here in this spot? And could you basically talk yourself into an alternate going down to 7.5?
Yeah, I probably could on the alt. I make this 7.9, but if the 7.5 is like again like plus 150, something like that, what like it was when we discussed an alt last week, be a little bit more interested. Now you mentioned the weather. Dome should be closed here. It's basically closed every single day in Arlington. They rarely open that thing up. Minute Maid, they opened it up a little bit in Houston. Arlington, they never seem to open the dome. And this has been the lowest park factor in baseball this season for runs, 30th in runs, 21% below the big league average, 29th for home run rate. This is typically a good homer park. From 2022 to 2024, plus 2% for run scoring, which was 11th, plus 15% for home runs, which was top five. As I said, 29th and 30th, respectively, this season. So I don't know what's going on with the baseball, specifically in Globe Life Park. It does seem like with the dome closed, the ball just is not flying that far. I've talked about it throughout this season. I've watched a lot of games there where batters off the bat respond with their body language and pitchers, based on the batted ball, respond with their body language like that batted ball is a home run. And it just does not get past the warning track. So something goofy is going on with the humidor there, or combining these new baseballs, whatever these new baseballs are, with raised seams and that humidor. Something's going on in Arlington that is just not making the balls fly this year, because it's evident both in watching the games and also in the park factors, which have plummeted to the worst in the league this season. Now, for these pitchers, and you mentioned Corbin struggling his past 2 starts, 10 strikeouts, 2 walks in those 2 starts. So command still seems to be there, is getting hit a little bit harder. But these are good matchups for these left-handed starting pitchers, because both of these teams have struggled against southpaw pitching this year. Texas is 27th against lefties, Baltimore 26th, both about 26% below the major league average against left-handed pitching. Over the past 30 days, they've been a little bit better. Texas 22nd, Baltimore 14th. But that said, these are still teams in their lesser offensive split against left-handed pitching. Texas is a very good defensive team, which is one of the reasons why they've been the best under team in baseball this year. 54, 29, and 1 to the under. That's a 65% win rate and a near 25% ROI. And at home, they're 30 and 12 to the under. As I said, 71% win rate, but a 37% ROI. Globe Life Park just is not getting runs across the plate this season. I do not know what it is, but it is something that does seem evident as we're getting a bigger sample. And then the last piece I should mention, these bullpens are both pitching much better of late. Baltimore, I expected to have a good bullpen coming into the year. Texas was a mystery. They were awful for the first couple months. Over the past month, Texas is 8th in expected FIP, 7th in strikeout minus walk rate. Baltimore, 3rd by both metrics. So bullpen's pitching well. Both teams in their lesser offensive split. Starters are a little bit scary, but getting the park factors or potentially reduced park factors here for Globe Life. And I should point out, it's not something I've reduced. I've basically kept the number for Globe Life where it is for the past few seasons, which when the dome is closed is about a 7% reduction versus the league average run scoring environment, or I should say 3% reduction versus the league average scoring environment. When it's open, it's closer to a 4% boost. So about a 7% swing typically, open versus closed. Going to continue to be closed. Just do not have umpire information. But right now, under 8.5 to minus 112. I would assume regardless of the umpire, there will be value on that under 8.5. It's just how much relative to the projected total and how much it moves. But my total is not going to move more than, 1/10 of a run, 2/10 of a run off the umpire.
I teased at the top that you like a bunch of underdogs. Let's start with your favorite here, the Buccos at plus 105 against the Cardinals. They actually are 2 games above 500 on their home diamond this year. They're sending Andrew Heaney to the hill, and not all that dissimilar from Patrick Corbin. Heaney was awesome in April, serviceable in May, and has fallen off a cliff in June. A 7.01 ERA this month, back-to-back performances in which he allowed 7 earned. His breaking stuff isn't fooling anybody, but the good news is that he should be in line for some really solid run support. Pirates just scored 30 runs in a three-game sweep at the Mets. That's the first time that they scored 9 runs per game in a series since 1999. So scoring at least nine across a three-game series, really impressive. So I assume they're going to stay hot, or at least you think so, against Feedy in this matchup. The journeyman just got rocked in his last start. He allowed 3 home runs to the Cubs. You think that's going to continue?
Yeah, this could be an over game because both pitchers seem to be struggling. Fede just gives up a lot of hits. I mean, he has in the past, and last year with the White Sox, he sort of broke out, and now he's regressed to what we expect, which is a 5% strikeout minus walk rate, so about a third of the major league average, an expected ERA north of 5.25 expected ERA. And his metrics are about a half run higher than Heaney. I mean, almost literally a half run higher. Heaney at 4.75, as I said, Fede at 5.25 expected ERA. Heaney at a 4.5 expected FIP. Fede at 5.1. So literally a half run between them in both categories. And Heaney's strikeout minus walk rate nearly double as well, 9% versus 5%. Called strike plus whiff is better. Body array also 7/10 of a run better. So across the board, Heaney kind of projects as a better pitcher for me than Eric Fede. But more importantly, left-handed starter puts the Cardinals in their lesser offensive split. They've ranked ninth, top 10 this year, ninth with a 108 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. They fall to 16th against lefties and are 8% below league average. So a 16% swing versus righties, 8% above, against lefties, 8% below. And over the past 30 days, 82 WRC plus, 18% below league average against left-handed pitching, 19th in baseball. It's just a big transition for a team that just a few years ago with Goldschmidt and Arenado and all those other right-handed sticks was the number one offense in baseball against left-handed pitching. Now they're a below average unit against lefties and well above average against righties. As you said, the Pittsburgh offense, Mike, red hot. Over the past week, ninth in WRC plus, put up 30 runs in 3 games against the Mets. O'Neill Cruz had a 2 home run game on Sunday. So hopefully he's heating up again because he started out the year really hot, looked like he was going to progress towards cashing our 30 plus home run bet ticket for him. I think I bet that at like plus 275 in the preseason. He's back up to 15 now, halfway through the year. So getting back on pace or close to it, but he is hitting near 200 because the strikeouts have been miserable. He's a really bad defensive center fielder as well. I think he's -6 in DRS in center field this year. But even considering that, having a bad defender at one of your premium defensive positions, the Pirates have actually improved significantly on the defensive end this year. They rank 6th and outs above average. It's 12th in defensive runs saved. They were 22nd by both metrics last year. So a clear bottom 10 defensive team now becoming a top 10 or at least an above average defensive team, I think is why the Pirates are being a little bit more competitive than they should, despite not scoring much. Their pitching's been okay. Their offense has not been good. Their defense has actually been pretty solid, which is why they've done as well as they have. Otherwise, they would be one of the bottom feeders in the league. So considering O'Neill Cruz, one of the worst defensive center fielders, and this is still a above average defensive team, I think is very interesting. Unfortunately, just in regard to the price, I wanted to lay that out for the remainder of this series. They were my favorite underdog last night. They've moved to about -107 today. I make this -114. So anything -105 or better on the Pirates would be a bet for me. You're just going to need for it to come back into range. But I would imagine, I mean, I bet them all 3 games in that series against the Mets. I'm on them again here today. The Cardinals have, in my opinion, become a little bit overvalued of late. So there's a chance that we just end up riding the Pirates all the way through this series, particularly if they win today. I'd be happy to if they continue to win today, but I think there will probably be projected money line edge on them throughout the series.
2 more underdogs here on your card. You have the Blue Jays hosting the New York Yankees. Max Scherzer making his 3rd start of the season after battling back from thumb inflammation. He's 40 years old. He still has that injury liability issue, but at this price point, you're clearly interested. What are your expectations, or what do you need from him here? 5 innings, 3 runs. Do you need more from him, given the fact that he's going up against Rodon in this matchup, or is this just a price point situation?
I'll take 5 innings, 3 runs from Scherzer, sure. The big piece for me, and I bet the over in his last start, which was his first start back off of the IL. His first start of the year, when he had the thumb soreness, which caused a shoulder injury, it caused lat soreness because the grip in his thumb was not gripping the ball properly, and that caused the lat soreness in his shoulder. So it was like an interconnected issue. they gave him a couple of cortisone shots. But his first start of the year, the velocity was down to 91.9. He finished last year at, I have the number in front of me, but I can't find it, of course. But basically, it was down like 2 ticks relative to last year. First start back off of the IL after getting 2 cortisone injections, back up from 91.9 to 93.2, basically where he finished last year. So, even though cortisone injections are just temporary relief, and I do not expect this to last, I do expect the injuries to crop up in again in the future, and I do expect decreased stuff and potentially for Scherzer to go on the IL again and get shut down for the end of the season. That's my prognosis for him in July, August. Right now, in the 3 to 5 start window that he has after getting these cortisone injections, where he probably will feel the best he has felt in years and will feel the best he will feel probably ever going forward because he can't get cortisone injections in the same spot after getting it twice. I do think this is a time to potentially bet Scherzer now that the velocity has temporarily, emphasis on temporarily, ticked back up. Because if he's sitting 93.2, I do think he can be effective and competitive. The expected ERA, strikeout minus walk rate, velocity, stuff plus, all moving in the wrong direction. 98 stuff plus in that most recent start. He was at 100 last year, 105 year before, 108 year before that. So you can even see, relative to last year, the stuff plus down ever so slightly. He's continuing a 4-year trend where all of his metrics are moving in the wrong direction, but projection systems still think he could be a league average starting pitcher. Projected FIP range of 3.8 to 4.5, but an average of 4.1, which would put him right around a league average pitcher. I make him a little bit below that, and I still show value on Toronto here. Number one, they're in their better split against the left-handed pitcher. It's the third straight game I've said this, that an offense is in their better split against the left-handed pitcher. Just kind of a goofy thing that's happened today, but the Jays fourth this year against lefties, 15% above the big league average, 16th against righties, 2% above, still above average against right-handed pitching, but they are much better against lefties than righties. And even over the past 30 days, they've improved from a 115 to a 125 WRC plus against lefties, so 25% above the big league average. And they're actually better against righties over that span too, a 114. So Toronto's offense has been hot, but they are in their better split. And throughout the remainder of this series, I will project them to have the much better team defense and also probably a slight bullpen advantage as well to the defensive piece against a team like the Yankees, against other teams who hit bombs. Defense obviously matters less. If the ball is not going to be in play, there's nothing you could do about it. That said, Toronto is an insanely valuable defensive team, and particularly with this lineup that they're going to put out against lefties tonight that has Miles Straw in the outfield as well. This lineup that is going to be on the field tonight is worth about a 5% swing in win probability just based on defense for me, and worth about 0.6 of a run pulling away from the other team's projected total just off of defensive quality. If you've watched the Blue Jays this year, and I have watched them a ton because they have been my most frequently bet on side this season, they make so many good plays on balls that would normally drop in for singles, preventing guys advancing extra bases. They are a tremendous defensive unit as a whole, and they're such a joy to watch as somebody who appreciates good defensive baseball. So that is why I bet on the Jays a bunch this season. That is why I show value on them today. And frankly, that is why both my projections and Pacoda would show value on them potentially stealing the American League East. They enter this series today just 3 games off the pace set by the Yankees. They play the Yankees, I believe, 6 times in the next few weeks. And by the way, they get to play the A's. They play the Rockies 6 times. This is a decent part of the schedule where it looks like the Jays could pick up some wins, both against the team on top of their division and against some of the worst teams in the league. And you can get the same number right now on Toronto to win the American League East as you could have gotten in the preseason. And they're just 3 games back right now. The average projection has them at about plus 800 to win the division. You can find 8 to 1 out there. You can find 10 to 1 out there. If you trust Pacoda, and if you've followed me on Toronto, we've been trusting Pacoda all season because we've been aligned with Pacoda as the highest in the market on Toronto. Pacoda has the Jays at about plus 540 to win the American League East right now. Most optimistic projections on Tampa, plus 367, and on the Yankees, -250. So I think of the three American League East teams who look like they're vying for the division, the Jays do offer value at about 10 to 1. I'd say down to about plus 650. If you're interested in betting them now, I think this could be a good time to pull the trigger. I do not think they will sit on their hands at the trade deadline either. They have prospects to trade, and I think they may end up moving some of them, especially with Anthony Santander not expected to return anytime soon. He hasn't done any baseball activities. So I do think the Jays could go out, make some moves, try to add a bat to this lineup, maybe add some starting pitching depth, but they are very much in the mix if they want to be. The question is whether they want to be, but this is one of the most valuable franchises in baseball, one of the richest ownership groups in baseball. So I would be surprised if they didn't try to spend, considering they just dropped the bag on Vladdy. Like you spent a bunch of money on Santander, spent a bunch of money on Vladdy, and now you're not going to go out and add something to the trade deadline. That wouldn't really make sense to me. So yeah, I think Toronto's in this thing if they want to be.
Reds traveling up to Boston. This is your last play on your card. You like the Reds plus 165 as a dog in this matchup against Garrett Crochet. And at least the trend line makes sense because in his last 10 starts, the Sox are just 5-5. And a big reason for that is the Sox lineup has just fallen asleep anytime that he's been on the hill. In 7 of his last 8 starts, they've mustered just 3 runs or less. On the other side, we get former Wake Forest ace and strikeout artist Chase Burns making his second career start for the Reds. Last week against the Yankees, he struck out 8 flashing. All that ability, all that amazing stuff. It's the reason why he was the number 1 prospect in the Cincinnati farm system. They've moved him up. They're clearly interested in him being a dominant pitcher at the top of their rotation for many years to come. But at plus 165, maybe we'll look back at this as an incredible value. You certainly think so.
I do. I said last week on the show, I don't believe you were here, Mike. I think you lost power. I lost power on Friday. Everybody lost power last week. But I said Chase Burns was immediately going to be an elite level pitcher. And I may have even sold him low, saying he would be closer to a number 2 the rest of the way. He looks like a number 1 right away. The stuff is absolutely filthy. I think the question is whether he can sustain it 2, 3 times through the order, turn over a lineup multiple times. Because the first time through the order, this kid is an absolute demon. I do not know who's going to hit him. There were a couple of counts where he fell behind 3-0 to the Yankees, and it was a tough matchup, by the way, in his first start against the Yankees. He fell behind 3-0 and was just like pumping fastballs down the middle with no fear, and getting swings and misses. 12 whiffs in that first start, 6 on the fastball, 6 on the slider, sat 98-1 on the fastball. The stuff plus on the fastball didn't grade out as high as I expected it to. Jacob Mizrowski has a stuff plus on his fastball like near 130. Mizrowski's pitch modeling metrics are insane. Burns' pitch modeling metrics not quite as insane. Just the 98 stuff plus on the fastball, but a 127 on the slider, 97 on the changeup. And Oopsie. Oopsie is the projection system which incorporates pitch modeling metrics, unlike the rest. They put his rest of season fit projection at 345. Everybody else is north of 4, based off of minor league numbers, based off projecting out rookies. Oopsie has him at a 345, and I think his body array, his body array was 2.7 in that first start. So elite arm, elite stuff, command, turning over a lineup multiple times, really the only concerns because everything coming out of his hand is electric. And the Red Sox offense, as you mentioned, Mike, has been ice cold since the Rafael Devers trade. They have a 75 WRC plus against right-handed pitching, so 25% below major league average, 26th overall in baseball. Obviously, Garrett Crochet, one of the best starting pitchers on the planet, and Crochet, too, does put the Reds in their lesser split because the Reds are better against righties than they are against lefties. Elly De La Cruz is a big piece of that. Elly really struggles to hit left-handed pitching. I wonder if Elly will give up switch hitting at some point because he has not done it well. A 67 WRC plus against lefties in his career, 129 versus righties. So Elly goes from 30% above to 30% below righty versus lefty. It is just a huge hole in their lineup against left-handed pitching. But the rest of this Reds lineup is starting to heat up, and Spencer Steer in particular. Grant not on the show today. I will give out Spencer Steer as a over 1.5 total bases bet. And then also, if you want to bet the home run prop as well, I worry about the monster. I worry about him dinging one off the top of the monster. But Steer is really heating up. 11-13 OPS, 360 batting average, 5 home runs in the past 2 weeks. And career-wise, 112 against lefties, 98 versus righties. So Steer in his better split does seem like one of the Reds' better right-handed bats. It's been a good power threat the last couple of years. Started out really slow this season. So I think Steer finally starting to get locked in a little bit. And then the last piece I want to mention is just Terry Francona and tightening things up around the edges this year. The Reds have been a bottom five, bottom 10 defensive team every year, I believe, since 2017 until this season. This year, they're closer to league average. They're 14th in DRS. They're 17th in outs above average, but they're plus 13 in defensive runs saved. They were minus 30 last year. They were minus 16 in OA last year. So the Reds have gone from one of the worst defensive units to a league average unit. And I think that's a big reason why they're over 500 this season. I've proven out in the past the best defensive teams, the worst defensive teams tend to overperform or underperform their season long win totals. The Reds, I expected some defensive improvement this year, and we've gotten it. And they are over 500 with the win total, I believe that closed at 77.5 or 78.5. So the Reds trending in the right direction, but the NL Central may be the best division in baseball. It like truly, four teams above 500 now. NL West only is three. Should mention the Cardinals too. I forgot to mention this earlier. The Cardinals have two losing seasons in the past 25 years. Nobody talks about this. The Cardinals have 16 playoff appearances in 25 years, and they've been under 500 twice. I think the Yankees are the only other team to do that, to not have more than two losing seasons in 25 years. The Yankees don't have any. But I'm not sure if any other organization, maybe the Dodgers. The Dodgers probably have a couple losing years in there before Magic Johnson and their current ownership group brought in. So, yeah, I mean, the Central's stacked. And, just to the point about like the Mets earlier in the show, Mike, and one losing streak could cripple one of these teams in the National League. It's very competitive. There's 11 teams in the mix, but the Cardinals, I think, as an organization, we don't give them enough credit for being competitive year in, year out, 25 years, two losing seasons, 16 playoff appearances, two World Series losses. That is quite an incredible streak. And I think they're just ahead of schedule this year. Unfortunately, I think Quinn Matthews got hurt. They had a couple of top pitching prospects, Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence, that they could use because I didn't like this team because of their rotation. I like their position player group. I like them defensively. They're first in outs above average. They have some young, fun guys. Their bullpen has some young, fun arms, or just some fun arms. I guess Helsley's not that young, but starting pitching is the concern with this team. Sonny Gray is great. If they had two electric AAA starting pitchers coming up, I'd be all in on the Cardinals. They just don't have it. And I doubt they're going to go out and use assets to acquire any significant pieces, that are better than a Eric Fede that they got last year, right? So I don't see the Cardinals going out and acquiring anything to move the needle, but the entire NL Central is competitive, and the Cubs should be panicking a little bit, just two games off the pace. It's all these teams behind them. It's a fun race heating up there, and we need some good races. The AL West, the Astros are starting to separate a little bit. It seemed like that was going to be a three-team race coming into the year. We may actually get like a four-team race in the NL Central, which couldn't ask for more than that.
No Grant Neifert today, so no dinger home run props to consider. But as a college baseball fanatic, I'm going to basically throw something out here for the upcoming Major League Baseball draft in 2 weeks. Cade Anderson's ascension up to the top prospect in this draft. It's one of the worst kept secrets. If you look at the mock drafts around the internet right now, he's always in the top three, but in a lot of cases, he's going off at number one. And I'm fine laying a little bit of juice at minus 120 for him to be the top pick and to be acquired by the Nationals there at the top of the draft. Now, our producer Gifford does bring up a good point, which is there's a lot of buzz around them potentially trading out of that pick. And if that's the case, then Anderson, in my opinion, will not be going number one. But in terms of just his head-to-head against Holiday, who's at minus 135 in the market, where would you go? Would you go with, Anderson, who's got a little bit of Max Fried to him as a lefty on the hill, or do you think you go with Holiday?
Nationals need pitching, so I would probably, if I'm the Nationals organizationally, I would want young pitching. They do have, a decent position player base, Abrams and Hassel and James Wood. It's not as good as people expected it to be. I mean, their rebuild still seems like it's a little bit behind schedule, but that is largely because they have the worst bullpen in baseball and one of the worst starting rotations in baseball. So yeah, need-wise, Nationals, I would probably go with the pitcher. Angels sitting at number two, though, I think are very likely to take a college player because they love rushing dudes to the big leagues. So if you could bet the Angels to draft a college player, like specifically as opposed to a prep player, I would bet that. I think that's basically a lock.
And just to be clear, they can't trade out against Major League Baseball rules, but they could cut a deal that could
Yeah.
impact, obviously, the top pick going in that direction. All right, that is it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you like tail some of the bets that you heard from Sean in today's episode, look for the quick slip link in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the pod. And if you're watching now on YouTube, give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description as well. We'll be back tomorrow with more from the majors. We're going best bets, favorite underdogs, and the rest of Sean's card. We'll also have other guests and Grant Neefer back with his home run props for Tuesday. For Sean Zerillo, I'm Mike Calabrese. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.